Now it's time to take a deep dive.
Okay, let's do a little deep dive. Sean, do you remember the console wars of the 1990s? We're going to do a little throwback to the console wars.
Very much so.
For you guys out there, so back in the 1990s, there was a massive console war going on between Nintendo and Sega. So there was a real fierce rivalry between those two companies, which defined much of the gaming landscape. So at the core of this battle were the two major consoles. It was the Super Nintendo, the SNES, which we have one right here, and which was released by Nintendo back in 1991, and the Sega Genesis, which was called the Mega Drive here in Australia. So that launched in 1989. Sega positioned itself as an edgier, more rebellious brand targeting older gamers with aggressive marketing and the iconic characters like Sonic the Hedgehog. They also played up on the Genesis' superior graphics and processing power. So that's where they really try to market it and try to upscale it to other people and say, well, this is a better product, step away from the Nintendo.
It's adult. This is a kid's console, the Super Nintendo, but this is Mega Drive's the real deal.
Absolutely. So meanwhile, Nintendo on the other hand, they took another path. So they really were more family-friendly orientated, I guess, and they focused more on the iconic franchises like Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and Metroid. Nintendo also capitalised on its long-standing reputation for quality games and innovation.
So the Sega Genesis, as it's called everywhere but Australia, basically, in the UK, I think they call it a Mega Drive there too, was released on October 29th, 1988, and in Australia it was actually released 30th of November 1990. Now the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the SNES, was released on August 23rd, 1991 in the US, and July 3, 1992 in Australia. And the rivalry between Sega and Nintendo was marked by memorable marketing campaigns. Now, we didn't get this in Australia, but we know about it. Everybody knows about it. The slogan, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. It's like, wow.
That was
salt in the wound.
That was quality marketing, wasn't it?
It's a direct attack, isn't it? Like it's brutal.
A little bit of salt thrown in.
Yeah,
there you go.
Brutal. Nintendo, it dominated the market, coupled with strong third-party relationships, ultimately helping it to maintain a lead for most of the 90s. The 16-bit era did see Sega take a brief lead, but the rise of the dark horse that came out of nowhere, Sony PlayStation in the 90s, and Sega actually fucking things up quite a bit with their Sega Saturn and the Sega Dreamcast. Actually, they're two consoles I don't have. I wonder why. It just led to a shift. And by the end of the 90s, Sega exited the hardware business, leaving Nintendo as the primary player in the console market, although they both did continue to shape the future of gaming in different ways. Definitely Nintendo smashed through with the 64, but the PlayStation, the dark horse.
That absolutely dominated when it came on the scene, didn't it?
It did.
It destroyed them both, really.
Well, I mean, Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast, name some great games. Name some. I can't. The X-Men ones were good. I said that I think in our first or second podcast. But
I wanted it to be good, but it just didn't work. I don't know why it didn't work. It just didn't work.
And it was a hard transition for kids to go from the cartridges that you spent all that time just trying to blow dust out of to the CD-ROM, CD game, because they were so much more expensive.
They were,
It cost a lot more.
Yeah, that was probably it, the cost.
Yeah. The hardware failures of the Dreamcast when it got released in 99, again. Who owned a Dreamcast, Chris?
Nobody, I couldn't tell you anyone that owned one of these things.
Couldn't afford one.
Couldn't afford one.
$4,000 a pop or something.
And the game was $2,500,
Yeah. So if you got one, and I didn't know of any that was sold, but you didn't get a package game either, so you probably had to buy a game.
Well, I think that was the other thing, right? When you bought like a SNES or something, it would come as a package deal. Remember? That was a big thing.
And
too.
you're not getting that with your
with your $8,000 console.
$8,000 Dreamcast in '99. Too late by then. Ship and sale for Sega.
It's gone.
Having said that, Nintendo wasn't all smooth sailing for Nintendo either. If you remember the Virtual Boy.
The Virtual Boy.
You probably don't. No, most people don't. A red diabolical mess you put over your eyes and you could see just black and red. And it was 3D. And it was a fucking shit show. Awful.
It sounds it.
Cannot recommend. But that was their failings. But nevertheless, at that point, it was really only down to two again. So you had Sega was gone. Sony, Nintendo, killing it. Having said that, Sega still did arcade games. Really good ones too. Some of the best. And speaking of the best, let's go to a top 10.